This is Wild on 7th, your favorite Wild podcast. Did you guys see this? This is unbelievable. What is that all about, Kinger?
Get in here for the real thing. Like, let's get weird.
Maybe I blacked out trying to figure out what was going on.
Doubt, worry, fear, because that's what we're breaking the mold on here.
Welcome to Wild on 7th, presented by Pilot Games. We're here until it's here.
And welcome back to Wild on 7th, your favorite Wild podcast, presented by Pilot Games. When you're out enjoying your libations, your drinks, your mocktails, your sodas, make sure you grab one of those tablets from the bartender and play Pilot Games products, because when you do, your community wins. They're a charitable organization, and they give back, Kinger. I know that you're a big pull tab guy, so the E-tabs are just as fun. But Kinger, we've got a different episode here today because we had the Four Nations announcements, and the Four Nations, I think, are under a magnifying glass here in Minnesota because Bill Guerin's the GM, and Brock Faber and Matt Boldy, are they going to be on the team? So I think there's a lot of hype around the Metro and around the state for this tournament. And despite the fact that it's a little ways out, you excited for this tournament in this episode? But we've got Mike Modano. He's going to join us a little later. We're talking about international hockey in general, what it's like to be playing in a tournament in the middle of a season, and how that can change the way a player thinks and the way that they're motivated to do certain things. And so that'll be fun. And we also have some sneaky good takes, I think, on the Four Nations and the Minnesota Wild. So we'll get to all that stuff. But because we have a slightly different episode, we're going to have to do things differently, Kinger.
We are.
So we're going to have to load up early, and it's going to be a long episode. So perhaps good nutrition should be at the forefront of that. Where would you go if you were looking to get nutritious quality foods?
Well, I'm heading down. I'm going to change this up for you a little bit. I'm heading down to Stewartville, and I'm getting some dips because it's dip season. You might be sending dip pics to your friends, great dip setups that you did. People love getting dip pics this time of year. You can get dill. You can get ranch. It's a tough time. A lot of entertaining. You can put on the LBs, so get a veggie tray. You can use it with potato chips as well, but get some Jimmy's dips. Nobody better. Family run, Minnesota company. Don't you be messing with my dressing. The ODR is probably doing great, and I'm sure one of our sponsors was involved in some way with that.
They were, yes. But for me, it's the holidays, and a happy holiday season to you. But with that, it's about savings. You think Black Friday, saving money, and Aquarius Home Services right now is offering a Kinetico Bundle Up and Save offer. You get 25% savings on all Kinetico non-electric water softeners and K5 drinking systems. I have my K5 drinking system. It's great, reverse osmosis. The benefits include spotless dishes, shiny fixtures, a pure, refreshing drinking water system, clearly what I'm talking about there. They have expertise, Kinetico does, when it comes to their products, how they go about it, the filters. They have a high-quality product in that regard. But make sure you check out Aquarius Home Services, get their Kinetico bundle up with that, and save. Good time during the holidays. Save a little extra of that dough so you can spend it on your dips, your holiday trays, your food, your kids, your presents, whatever that might be, Kinger.
That's great. Now, I love this episode, even though it is a little different, because the Stallion came back, Mr. Modano. I mean, we all remember, if you grew up here, you remember that Modano jersey flap. Nobody skated like the boy from Livonia. Livonia? I think that's right. But I do want to say we gave him the bait on that state trooper story. But that was just great. He walks in. He says at some point somebody's pulled him over recently, doesn't have his license, comes back to the car. Will you just write your name down? And then he writes down the name, Mike Modano.
Yeah, on a piece of paper.
On a piece of paper for the officer, and the officer crouches down, has his birth date on it too. He says, "Oh, you're 54, so am I. Wish I was retired." Let's just say Modo didn't get a ticket. So yeah. It's good to know that there's still some privileges of the National League. And we got the World Juniors coming up right now. I am a I'm a USA gold medal is more valuable to me than a Stanley Cup. So I guess I'm European in that way. So it's a rite of passage with the World Juniors right around the holidays. And then we're going to be going into the Four Nations with the 3 Swedes from the Wild and the 2 American boys coming in. So it's just going to be a good time of year for best on best. We haven't had it since 16, and nobody knows it better than Modano. Lots of Olympics, World Championships, and the famous World Cup of '96. So if you are into the red, white, and blue, or the red and white, or the blue and yellow, whatever your fancy is, this is an episode for you to dine in on, because we got a lot of best on best talk today.
Well, before we get into some of that, let's check in with the Wild, because there's been a lot going on. They got some guys back, so if we're going to do the Bosch injury law right now, the good thing is the injury report was getting smaller. They've got Matt Zuccarello and Jonas Brodin back, but Jake Middleton jumps on, Lauko back on, Philip Gustafsson all of a sudden misses the last game. So I know it's hard to quantify. It just feels like the heavy road schedule early is catching up with these guys now. And like Jake Middleton's injury, I think he blocks a shot and it hits the hand or the upper body and he goes out. You can be like, that has nothing to do with fatigue. But sometimes I think it does. Like you're like, I'm just going to throw a hand at this. And maybe not in that specific scenario, but there are just times where like the decision making is off a little bit, and you're in a certain situation where you get hurt and you wouldn't ordinarily be there. Not saying that was the case for any one of these particularly, but I think there's a correlation to the fact that the Wild were healthy. They go on the road for a bunch. They're traveling. Now the injuries are starting to pile up a little bit. But the good news is they're still finding ways to get points. They were great at finding ways to win, and they're struggling a little bit without key pieces out to get over the hump and win some of these games. But they got a good game from Wallstedt in net against Vegas. Like that was a great hockey game. So he comes up under emergency basis on the second of a back-to-back and plays really well. Matt Zuccarello comes back, and he looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Whenever he comes back from injury and he skates with Andy Ness, he's instantly an impact player. Like it's impressive how that group gets him set up and ready to go. He jumps up on that top line, and it's like he never left.
Oh, and Kirill, I mean, the ESP is back. I mean, he's almost like one of those sad lamps that people get with the sunlight. When Zuki's back, 97 smiling a little bit more. I wish we would have had Brodin back for the Edmonton game. Mm-hmm. Throw that blanket on Connor. That was not the case. But, yeah, we kind of put a couple back in the bucket, and then a couple fell out the bottom of the bucket. But their consistency is what has impressed me. You know, not losing back-to-backs at the time of this recording anyway. Kirill, you made a really bold prediction that he wouldn't go 3 games without a point, and he keeps chomping at the bit. So they, since camp, with Hines running this hard, I think Modano calls it a track meet. I mean, that discipline, that mentality has been there since the start of the 24-25 campaign, and it's benefiting us now with this tough road schedule, and it's a grind, and these guys are chewing through the wood.
What do you think it'll be like for the club without one of the bunkhouse guys, maybe the bunkhouse leader? It might be Rip. Middleton might be Rip.
That's a
What do you think it'll be without?
I mean, the guy is just, I think the word I would use on him, and this sounds derogatory, he's goofy. And I mean that in the best way. He's the perfect bunkhouse guy. He might have you holding his teeth while you're playing pull tabs. He's such a great, that has to hurt not having that guy there. I don't know if he's Rip. I think Rip has to be Foligno probably. And by the way, has he gotten violent? With Marcus Foligno throwing equipment is, a lot of people like to listen to those people talk softly or whatever their little fetish is. If there was a montage of Foligno just throwing his gear post-fight, I'm all over that. I would watch that, get the right music on it. I mean, it's great.
I think the podcast got him going there, because wasn't he on and we're like, hey, there's no majors. Brock Faber has the only major.
We better be careful.
And they went on a
that.
heater.
Yeah, Hines will be swinging by probably to talk to us. But that fight was interesting, the one where it looked like a one-punch knockout, but kind of when you watch the replay, it was almost like he hit him in the back and the guy kind of fell. But on the eye test on it was it was like an MMA fight, a one-punch knockout. So I like an angry moose myself, especially this time of year.
Yeah. So I just think that a lot of the team's success early on was kind of this moxie in the room and like a vibe coming out of that room. And the hope is that with these pieces gone for a bit, that they don't lose that vibe. One thing I'll be looking at. So another thing that we should talk about, because this has kind of been a trend in the Wild's game before we get to the international stuff, is the fact that in this week coming up is going to be another tough week. They got the defending Stanley Cup champs coming in on Wednesday night.
Is Barkov healthy?
I think so.
I watched him play last night. I couldn't tell. I didn't hear his name a lot, but the last time we beat him, he was not there. That's like not having Eriksson Ek or not having Kopitar. So for fans out there looking for the Wild to slay a dragon, the defending champs are coming into town. Late start, by the way. That could be dangerous on West 7th.
No kids.
The 8:23. As you head into the holidays. But that's a game to circle on your calendar for sure.
Yeah, but then you've got Utah and Winnipeg coming in back-to-back. I think that's Friday, Saturday.
Circle to Winnipeg and Nashville on New Year's Eve, I think.
And then before the break, you've got your final game against Chicago at home. So kind of a tough week in that you've got Winnipeg and Florida, and you're in a spot where I think the Wild are kind of, hey, let's prove some things to ourselves right now on what we are. We threw some stats out in the Modano interview, so you'll get this twice, might be a little bit redundant, but the Wild have been good against the teams that are outside the playoffs, and I think they've played 18 games and they've won 14. They've played 13 against playoff teams, current playoff teams as of today, and they've only been able to be a 500 club throughout that. Scoring's down and defense numbers are down too. So I think it's a big week where they're going to look at this and say, all right, can we do it against the good competition? Can we do it against Florida? Can we do it against Winnipeg? Can we get 3-4 goals? Can we keep them down to 1-2 goals? Can the penalty kill deliver in a big moment? So I actually think it's a big week for the Wild going into the Christmas break.
Agree. And I even was going to say, you had the 7 with Edmonton, but you had the 7 with Philly, I think. So those stats are pretty accurate,
yeah.
Playoff, non-playoff. If you got a body of work here now, and it's going to come down to depth scoring, and I would love to slay a dragon, beat Florida again, get Winnipeg is always, that's a true rival.
Yeah.
That team is certainly turned into it.
Well, if you were going to slay a dragon and you had a celebratory dinner after, where would you get the food?
I would go to Cub because I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I love this place. I remember when they used to have these bumper stickers, I love Cub, and I just saw them all over the Twin Cities, and that's because it's a great place to get your groceries. Also, you can get your libations, as you like to say. A lot of them have liquor stores. They do deliver, and it's that time of year. If you're entertaining, you're going to save money over at Cub. You're going to get fresh products, and you're going to have yourself a great time. Support Cub. They're one of us, and they're the best grocery store around here.
Boom, like it. And as you load up on your groceries from Cub for the holidays, make sure you take a look at your house too, because I think everybody wants to have pride in their home when they're hosting family and friends over. So if there are some drafts underneath your door or some windows that you might think are leaky, call our friends at Wild Construction and they'll come over and get you taken care of. They can handle all your exterior needs right now: siding, windows, doors, you name it, they've got you covered. They specialize in the roof. Nobody's getting up on a roof in the middle of winter, so they can't check that out for you now. But you do have 12 months, so if you suspect that you were in an area that had storm damage and you might be in need of a new roof, they have all the tools and resources on their website to help you out and get signed up and set up for them to jump up there when they can, when spring arises. But that's wildconstruction.com. Check them out.
All right, now we're going to head into a deep dive on the Four Nations with, I think, some outstanding hot takes that we do test with the legend.
Yeah.
We test the theories with Modano in the interview right afterwards. But
so we went on a heater. We recorded this like last week. John had us in. He put it in the upper deck. He was feeling good. We talked about this a little bit, and we had some Four Nations hot takes, and we didn't want it to hit the cutting room floor. So we're going to put it in right here, and then following that, we talked to Mike Modano about some of these things. So it's all good stuff. Thanks for listening.
Enjoy.
So we got to get back into this because we want to talk about it while it's fresh in our minds. I don't even know the date, December 9th, and the Four Nations was released on December 4th. And we'll get to it, but that podcast was getting long. Jared Spurgeon, too good. Anyways, so you look at the rosters that were released. You are red, white, and blue of international hockey.
Obsess over this.
Yeah. Let's talk about Team USA, then let's talk about the Wild. So,
okay, so I was so basically I'm very intrigued by this because we haven't had best on best since 16 World Cup. Remember, at that time, McDavid and Matthews played on Team North America. That's how long it's been. Connor's been in the league for like 9 years. We haven't had any international play best on best. Now, Russia's not in this tournament, so you got a little asterisk there. But I think this is a generation on the U.S. side. This is a group of players that has the ability to be the best. They're the favorite in the tournament, largely because of goaltending.
Okay.
So Canada has a goaltending problem in theory. We've got Hellebuck is on fire, and we've got a generation of players that have never gone best on best besides World Juniors for that little window, right? So you got the Tkachuk brothers, you got the Hughes, you got Matthews, you got defensemen like Fox and Faber and Boldy's on the team. So I think the only grief Billy really got about selecting the team was basically Cole Caulfield leading the league in goals, Tage Thompson, a big body, and there were a couple Rangers added to the team, Kreider, Trocheck. They've seem to be having a culture problem in New York, Trouba getting sent out to Anaheim, and so there was a little bit of internet noise around that. The only one that the Ghost,
Gostisbehere.
He's a hell of a player. He's not on the roster. That was one where the guy gets like 3 assists a night. So, but I never heard anybody mention that. But I think he basically selected mostly what everyone thought. Maybe Brock Nelson was a surprise over Tage Thompson, but looks good. Looks like a group that can play any way you want to play with great goaltending.
Yeah, and I think Billy has often said, almost in every interview he's done, that he's not building a team of the best 20 players. He's building a team that gives them the best chance to win, and there's a slight difference. Going back to a point that you made on the goaltending, on why the U.S. has the advantage, I actually don't see it that way. And here's why. Canada has 2 cup winners on their team. The U.S. has 0. And in a situation where you've got to find a way to be good in big games and get there fast, Canada's goalies have done that. And it's not easy to just flip a switch and be good, but they've played in pressure-packed situations, and they have succeeded, and that experience really matters. And for me, if you want to look at that, if you want to learn about what it's like for a goaltender to play in pressure-packed situations, go to that Amazon series. What's it called? Face Off? I think it's episode 3 with Jeremy Swayman. You start to see the pressure that is applied to those guys in big moments. And this goes through this is the second round. This isn't West or East final and then the Stanley Cup. Pressure affects those guys, and it doesn't matter how well they play in the first 82 games. If you're good and you can get through it when it matters the most, you get excited about those moments because you know what's coming and you know you can handle it. And I think that automatically elevates your game. Now, this doesn't mean I think Canada's winning. I just think that narrative that Canada's underrated in goal is BS.
Oh, by the way, if you're a betting person and you got plus money on Canada in an international tournament with Makar, McDavid, and Crosby, I mean, you could hammer that all day long. But it is interesting. The U.S. is technically the favorite in the tournament.
Based on betting.
Betting. Yeah, the odds. The odds are. So the tournament's interesting, too, okay? So start in Boston. They don't have the U.S. play Canada in Boston. The U.S. plays Sweden. Canada plays Finland. They then go to Canada, Montreal, and you get the U.S.-Canada game in the pool play in Montreal. It's a double-decker that day. Quite a day in Montreal if you want to take a trip. Then if they win their pool, I believe they're going to play for third and first back in Boston. The pool is set up that if the U.S. and Canada have success, they'll meet each other in the gold medal game back in Boston if they both advance. And then, so, I mean, it's going to be electric. I actually think I want to get your take on this. So I went to Salt Lake, I went to Vancouver, saw the U.S. lose on the Crosby goal. Billy's got the experience from the 96 World Cup. Because I'm a total dork, I just rewatched this documentary, Orchestrating an Upset on YouTube. Awesome. One of the most violent tournaments of all time. I mean, it was unbelievable. Power forwards killing each other. Lindros and Billy and Tkachuk and Brett Hull. And I think this is going to be jail. What did Middleton call it?
Junkyard.
Prison rules or something.
Rules.
I think the Tkachuk brothers are basically Peaky Blinders. Canada took Sam Bennett. I think you're going to see teammate on teammate. I think it's going to be awesome. I think people are going to get. I think it's going to be old time hockey. I could be wrong, and that's the thing with Canada. I actually think
I love that you're bringing this up.
It could not be true at all, and it could be like the Vancouver gold medal game was the best played hockey game I've ever seen. But it wasn't violent, and it wasn't old time hockey. But it was just perfect hockey. But Canada actually did the thing to me, looking at the rosters, take the best team, not the all-star team, with the D pairs. With Sam Bennett, if I look at Canada's roster and I just look at the names, there's a lot of names. Cough button, should have pushed it. But there's a lot of guys I don't know as well that seem more like role players. So it feels more like Canada's like short tournament. Got to come together quick. So I'm going to put these couple sets of D together, and I got the shit stirrer with Bennett. Maybe he's fighting Tkachuk, or who knows what happens. So I like what Canada did as well in terms of building a team.
I think they took a lot of cup winners too.
Yeah.
They took guys that have won, and they took Panthers, and they took guys that battle in those final weeks of the season when you're beat, when you're tired, like who can do it.
This is a really interesting thing. I want to see how many cup winners are on the U.S. team. Keep going, but tell me your theory about is it going to be a bloodbath?
Well, so I think it's a bloodbath. There's a couple,
I think guys are going to get injured.
There's a couple points to this. When I look at the U.S. roster, and I think Brock Nelson and Chris Kreider, and why are they there?
Those are tough bastards,
but
too.
I also think that they have committed to USA Hockey. They've played in World Championships. They don't say no. And Billy has said, and Billy might be I don't know if he's been named the GM of the Olympics yet. I think he's probably on track to do that. Has he been named? Did they name both?
I think he's Italy as well. I think
he
so.
named both. I can't remember, but I think so. It's in the background.
I'll check it while you're talking, but I'm going to look at cup winners.
I think some of these roster placements are statements. He challenged guys to play at the World Championships, to be good, to do these things. And the guys that went, represented, and played well, that mattered. And Billy wants guys that are going to buy in, not guys that are like, not this year. And I think the guys that were on the fringe that are buy-in guys. And with that, I think Billy has a style that he wants to play. And I think it's going to require buy-in. I do think it's physical. I do think that it could get mean. He knows he's got Tkachuk, and Tkachuk might be the biggest lightning rod in this tournament, in my opinion.
Well,
this is Matthew.
Well, it might be Brady. Brady's nasty too.
But what Brady doesn't possess that Matthew does
is the get under your skin factor.
No, is the moxie and the finish. Like I'm going to be in your face all day and then I'm going to score the goal. Actually, it's what Brad Marchand has too. He's going to get you. He's going to grind you. He's going to hit you. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be when you least expect it. And then when the world is watching, he's going to score the biggest goal of the game, and everybody's going to hate him. Matthew Tkachuk, for me, is that guy, right? And I love watching him play. I think he's the U.S.'s competitive advantage, but I do think that U.S. management is probably going to recognize that too, and they're going to lean into it, and they need buy-in guys. Now, coming out of this and why I think this affects the Minnesota Wild, and this is going to change the tune of the conversation, but we'll go back to where you were before this.
I checked it, which is shocking.
What is it?
There's 3 players on the U.S. roster that have won the Cup, if I'm doing it right. It's
right.
Gensel won one, right?
Yeah.
Tkachuk Eichel. Okay, so tell me how many of these Canadians have won it. Sam Bennett, yes. Cirelli, yes. Crosby, yes. Hagel, yes. Seth Jarvis, no. Konechny, no. McKinnon, yes. Marchand, yes. Not Marner, not McDavid. Point, Reinhart, Stone, McCarr, not Morrissey. Parayko won it with St. Louis, right? Pietrangelo won it twice. Sanheim, no. Shea Theodore, yes. Taze, yes. Binnington,
Yes.
Aiden Hill.
Yes.
So that's, what is it? Is that 16?
I don't have that many fingers.
Yeah, 16 cup winners. Never thought about it that way.
So
interesting.
It's different. And
16 to 3.
So that's an interesting point. We can dissect that again later, but it's kind of where I was going with this. When it comes to winning Stanley Cups now, side note that I think is super intriguing, who actually wins in this tournament, the Stanley Cup, are the people that have marquee Russian players, because they're going to get that week off. And I don't know how physical this tournament's going to be, but if it turns into a 1996 World Cup of Hockey absolute bloodbath, it is taking miles off of everybody else's Ferrari, while yours is sitting there getting waxed, cleaned, rested, tuned up, refueled, and ready to go.
I really like what you're doing here. So hypothetically, if you had a team that had a superstar Russian on it, and that Russian was maybe in Cancun with his friend and his little buddy, Murat, and he was getting gold and brown. His arm hair was blonde, salted rim. That could be a guy that that team, hypothetically, I don't even know what team I'm talking about right now. That team could have some success in the push.
I do think so.
Unfortunately, there's a guy named Kucherov down in Tampa, too.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying, I think that might matter. Now, there are going to be some guys that have great Four Nations tournaments and then ride confidence from that. There's no doubt. So it's not like, just because they go to the tournament means they're going to stink down the end. That's not what I'm saying.
No, Marchand famously became the player he is, skating on a line with Crosby. I think it was in the World Championships.
Yeah.
Transformative. Yeah. He went from being like a good player to a superstar just from that experience he had.
And I could see some of these players, specifically Russians, because they can't play and they're good, and because Kirill is from there and he's the star of this team, and if the Wild are going to win a cup, it's going to be because of him. He'll be the Conn Smythe if the Wild win the Stanley Cup.
What about trading for Russians at the deadline with really buying into this theory? I think this is a great theory. It's a bit like the sunshine theory.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. I do have another wrinkle.
But I want to make one more point on this.
This is we should have just done this the whole time. We got to bank this for Billy.
But I think that the Russians are going to watch this, and this is going to be so celebrated by the NHL, and at times they might feel like, I cannot believe
we got left out of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I am going to prove
that we're the best.
Yes.
This is a great theory. I love when you have stuff like that up your sleeve. I got one for you, though.
Yes.
3 words. Do it. Oh, it's 4 words. Do it for Johnny. Okay?
Oh.
Big Outsiders guy. I can hear Matt Dillon's voice. Do it for Johnny. Johnny Gaudreau. That event this summer was so terrible that I wanted to throw up. I think you felt the same way. It made you want to vomit when you heard the news. Just the whole thing. The wedding, the brother, awful. This guy was the first guy to answer the call for USA Hockey. He was one of those guys, like a Kreider. These guys, I'm going to go. I'll be in the World Juniors. I'll be on the championships, all that. And I don't know, man. I don't know how you treat information like that. I don't know how you bring that into your room, but that is hanging over this tournament as far as I'm concerned. As a U.S. hockey player, do it for Johnny. That's a thing. And for a lot of these guys, that means something because they knew him well. They played with him. They played with him in the red, white, and blue. I think it's a factor. I really do. And sometimes you see a team get inspired in that way, and I think he'll be watching over the red, white, and blue.
I like it. There's an added layer to that element.
What's that?
Well, I don't know. Well, I will say that I do not think that the roster that was announced is going to be the roster that plays.
Absolutely not. Guys are going to get hurt. Like, for sure it's changing.
And there's a number 13 that wears that because of Johnny Gaudreau that might end up being on this team. And he has a skill set that just might be good enough to become a tournament MVP as a late add-on.
And he wears 13 in the Four Nations would be amazing. Let's talk about
his home city. We're talking Cole Caulfield.
Let's talk about Caulfield for a minute, okay? I love watching this guy play because he's so happy. I've never seen a guy that likes scoring goals more than him, maybe Ovechkin. This smile on this kid's face. Now, I think Caulfield gets looped into this kind of Zegras Michigan generation. You know, like I want to do a Michigan or kind of, you know.
I think he gets looped into the Rossi thing that we were talking about earlier in the Spurs.
Because of his size?
Yeah.
Well, Johnny was small too, right? And look what he did. Best college season of all time, 100-point guy in the NHL. I mean, Caulfield, I agree with you. Guys, we're months away from this tournament, right? There's so many things that can happen. You got JT Miller on the roster. He must have communicated something to Billy that he was okay with whatever he's going through. But, yeah, I could see that's a really interesting element. And the Montreal factor, that's probably why the noise is so loud on the snub or the perceived snub. I didn't even think of that with them hosting part of the tournament. But, yeah, I'd like to see him in there. That would be great. That's a good wrinkle.
Cool, man. Any other Four Nations thoughts? Like, we'll be digging into this more.
I want to go. I'm going to try to go.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the way to do it is you go to that first weekend in Boston and you just smell it, and then you go home and watch it on TV. Because I know I don't want to go to Montreal. I was in Canada for Vancouver, and it was not a friendly environment. And they won, and I still was like running to the car. Boston on the championship would be amazing, but I think I just want to be sitting in my TV watching that if it happens. I'm excited. Are you excited? I love it. I love Best on.
It'll be fun. There's just so many storylines that are unique to something like this. Teammates against each other. It's countries. It's best on best. It's middle of the NHL season. There are Stanley Cup implications coming out of this tournament.
The Russian wrinkle is amazing. I love that. Do you think Brady Tkachuk ends up on the Rangers?
No.
That's what they're saying. They're moving salary. That's intriguing to me, too, if that happens before the tournament.
Yeah. I don't know.
I wouldn't trade him. My God.
That'd be almost an admittance that he's the problem in Ottawa, which he is not. I don't think.
Well, he's all over. They're all over him on social media because when he gets in a fight, they're like 2-15. And so they don't want him to fight, the fans. Ottawa's a disorganized enough organization that I could see him doing it. I really could. And he'll like win the cup within 2 years.
They're like
you cannot
like the Cleveland Browns of the NFL. Like, yes, we're finally getting our quarterback.
I could absolutely see Ottawa do it. Of all the teams that would trade Brady Tkachuk,
Deshaun Watson, we're set back 20 years again.
Nobody else will do it. We're going to do it. No, of any team that could mess this up, I could see him rolling into Broadway.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about the Four Nations as it gets closer. A lot of great stuff when it comes to this. Wild are playing great, too. Interesting storylines. Good guys. They've got Four Nations implications. All right, buddy.
See you, buddy. We're here.
Till it's here.
All right. This interview is sponsored by Duke Cannon. It's that time of year, folks. If you're making those late holiday gifts, go get some big ass soap, get some body wash, get some cologne, get some hair product, hardworking products for hardworking dudes. Duke Cannon. And we got a hardworking dude here. We're going to talk a lot of best on best hockey with USA's own Mike Modano. I'm actually wearing best on best because I have this.
You're wearing vest on best.
Vest on best. I got the little Salt Lake. I got the World Cup 2016, the last time, and we're gonna go deep with you on some of this new thing happening with the Four Nations. And welcome back to the podcast, brother.
Thanks. I got that vest in my
It's
0-2 bag.
Yeah, Roots was a big thing there
big
for
time.
a
Oh, that's
while.
Roots? That's like the
Oh,
Canadian?
people were killing each other for Roots.
Yep,
back
that
in the
was a big
But that's a
thing.
Canadian brand, isn't
It
it?
is
Yes. But the guys from Detroit,
Okay.
borderline.
the Roots are Detroit, and then he moved to Toronto. And then
Okay.
Then he did Roots. So
He's like Brett Hull.
kinda-
Brett Hull.
Yeah.
You know, he's fine.
Like the Kachuk brothers or the Foligno brothers.
Yep, yeah, that's right.
Canadian, but American.
Yeah. Holly got, cut from Canada, so he came to U.S.
And he did him well.
Did it all right.
Well, I just watched the Orchestrating an Upset documentary on YouTube. If anyone hasn't watched this, you have to watch it. This World Cup, and we talked a little bit about this with you, but I wanted to start with, so that tournament was so interesting. I was looking at the penalty minutes, right? So I think, did Keith Kachuk get launched out of the last game and it got ejected?
Yeah.
Okay, that's outstanding. So was he out there when you guys got the gold? Did he get to come back? How does that work?
He came back out.
Okay. So he has 44 penalty minutes in the World Cup of Hockey, which I think is 7 games. So that's outstanding. But these are all double-digit penalty minutes. Chelios, Hatcher, Waite, Billy Guerin, 17, good work. Messier, Lindros, Coffey, Lemieux, Claude Lemieux, 19. Foote, you've heard of some of these names. Even the Russians were getting angry. Fatizov, Kasparaitis, Zelepukin, 20. Primo, 21 penalty minutes. So then I looked at the World Cup 2016, total clean, none of that. Billy Guerin's the GM of USA. Sam Bennett's on the Canadian roster, Kachuk brothers. Is this thing going to be a street fight, or is this going to be a dance in the Four Nations? What's your take, modern versus old?
Well, I think that might be because the tournament's so congested and it happens quick. You have to really get into it fast. There's no real feeling this thing out. It's a quick round robin game, so you have to jump right into it. 100 miles an hour. So I could see, it getting nasty early and fast. With Kachuk brothers and a few other guys. So I think it'll get revved up. Bennett's going to be nasty, and I'm sure him and Matthew would go head to head.
I know.
There was a lot of guys on our team that were on other teams that, for that moment in time, those things are kind of set aside until you kind of see each other, a week later. So it's all hands on deck. It just gets nasty, and you want a little bit of the bragging rights, but I could see it getting revved up.
What was the lead up to the '96 World Cup? Because I feel like John and I get the sense that it might be nastier than the NHL games that we see right now, where
It sure is.
in a short tournament, and you think about the Stanley Cup playoffs, like it gets tighter and harder fast, and then will this tournament be that? And will they be fighting for every inch? I'm curious, the lead up to the 96 tournament, did you know it was going to be a battle? Like, were there headlines saying it's going to be a bloodbath,
Well, I think you had the media and everybody else in the hockey world hoping that these 2 points meet, for the best of 3. So, we figured if we played decent enough hockey, we would get to the final, and same with Canada. I mean, you look at both rosters. You look at Canada's roster. I mean, my God. I mean, I don't know. There's 15 Hall of Famers maybe on that lineup. It just goes on, and they're all nasty, tough, skilled players, and so. I credit Ron Wilson too, and other assistant, he's in Philadelphia, Holmgren. 2 guys that just from the point we got to Providence for a week and a half of practices, they just started pushing buttons, like getting Kachuk revved up, Billy.
Really? So
Hatch, just kind of, little shocks of here and there, like, this is going to get like a throwdown grudge match. Let's just be, so it's always this kind of jabbing with these guys, getting them revved up. And, you get those guys revved up and you get them on the ice. It's like they didn't know which way to, go. They were just going 100 miles an hour.
there was no puck out there.
Hit and chop everything, they had no clue there was a puck.
So there was a lead up.
There was,
like the staff knew it was going to be that way, and
there was,
and they'd go up to Billy and say, "Hey, remember we watched that game where Mess punched you right in the face? Remember that elbow he gave you?"
Yeah,
In
our first practice, it felt like it was going 2,000 miles. We were just up and down. Just guys were just so pumped and excited and ready to get going. But we still had a week and a half before we started played a game. But we had so much fun in Providence, just off ice, good camaraderie. I think Chelios was kind of borderline. He wasn't sure he was playing, and we sent guys to kind of caress him to kind of come with us. I think he was kind of tied up with some family wedding that he couldn't be there, and so we were trying to massage him to come be a part of it. But yeah, once it started, and then you got to the best of three was just crazy hockey.
And that's a different dynamic when it gets to best of three, because you're staring at the guys that you're going to have to beat twice, and that makes every check, I think, a little bit more important body check.
And Hatcher, he probably had the best week of hockey he's ever had. He was just a menace. It was so ugly. Just no rules. I was the center between Guerin and Kachuk. That was my line. So I never saw the puck.
Or the boards. You guys handle the boards. I'll be out here.
I was just picking up gloves and going to the penalty box. Here.
That's like being the flag bearer at a Wild
Shin
game.
pad tap. Good job.
You just come out and put your stick at center ice.
That's right. So it was just mayhem. And the first game was in Philly. We lost in overtime, I think, and then you had to win 2 in a row in the Forum, the old Forum in Canada, and it was just hostile. People were just going. They just wanted blood.
And it's fun too, because the schedule's different than the NHL schedule. Like, NHL schedule is not a tournament where you're in one spot for an extended period of time. So you guys will go to the game, then you go back to the hotel, have a meal, a couple beers, talk about it, wake up the next morning. You might have a practice. Like, you're in one spot. And now I think that the Four Nations is moving around a little bit, but travel will probably be the following day.
Yeah, Boston, Montreal, it's easy.
Right.
And great cities, by the way.
Yes.
And mid-season. That's the other thing.
I was going
They
to
are
ask you.
mid-season.
And was the World Cup mid-season?
It was before training camp.
Before training camp.
September.
Do you think mid-season, so if you've played in the Olympics or different things, like, is that distracting for players? Like, at some point, like, as that tournament nears, are the players playing in it, like, playing different? Like, I want to play in the Four Nations. I'm not going to get hurt, and change the way they play?
You'd hope not, because you're still kind of trying to hold that spot. You just don't want to have anybody else be a kind of a sleeper pick that wasn't picked, or injury problems that might be added to the list later on. So you want to come have a good start. You want to get noticed early by Billy and the whole staff and Sullivan, and so you want to get your name out there early. But I think they had in their head who this lineup's going to look like and what's going to be but in it. But honestly, I didn't have Faber or Boldy on that lineup. They just came out of the gates and played well and earned their spots. And, like a few others that they're not on the lineup, you thought they would be. So that certain numbers played out as it kind of went on here before selection was made. But, I think it's a little different when you just got to stop the season. You got to roll into this, rev it up 1 week, come back, start your season. I think the pre-training camp thing was just, there was this buildup of all summer.
Yeah,
it was all summer
bigger
long.
buildup.
Yeah, and it was like you had 2 weeks of camp in Providence. They were all in, Montreal, Toronto. So there was this whole, upswell.
Yeah.
And, it was like a pre-camp thing. So there was a lot of media coverage, a lot to it. But yeah, quite frankly, the rosters were just, even the Russian roster, you go down the list, it was just amazing players at that time altogether.
You make a really good point that the lead up to it, the Four Nations, there's lead up, but there's a hard pause to the NHL season. So every game matters until that hard pause, and then it's like, okay, let's quick turn the page, get to the Four Nations tournament, and let's get up to speed as fast as we can. And then we're there for a week, 10 days, whatever it might be, boom, and then right back to the NHL schedule. That's different than a full summer ramp-up where they're talking about the hate, the angst, the rosters, and get right into it.
Then the hard part is coming back. The guys who aren't playing, they get 2 weeks off. To be on the beach somewhere for a while, they got to come back and get their game back up to where it was. So there's it kind of plays a little bit head game there too for those guys.
Should we test our theory on him?
Yeah, I want to ask one more on that. Like, so you don't think it's a distraction for players, like, or it'll change their focus? Because the next thing I'm curious about coming out of the tournament is, will guys, like, can you get confidence for the home stretch of the season from a tournament like that? You go, you have a good tournament, and all of a sudden you're feeling good about your game. Or you go and you really struggle at the tournament, and the headlines are, hey, so-and-so really struggled. Can it weigh you down for the rest of the year?
Yeah, it could probably play both ways, right? So we when we won 96, I think we all went back to our team, and majority of us that won probably had some of our best seasons,
right,
statistically. And then, in Dallas, we kind of went on a run there for the next 5 years, and, Western Conference Finals, and we won. And, so I think it has a lot to do with, because prior to the Cup, I was just struggling. I wasn't enjoying hockey. It was a real struggle. We just kind of came off leaving Minnesota, so I was just 2 years into Dallas, so it was just kind of really a hard time for us. We were just struggling, couldn't make the playoffs, and this thing kind of catapulted us as far as players and everybody else. And Leachy and those guys just came off winning in New York, and the Wings went on their run 97, 98. So there's a lot of those players that were in this tournament just had some great Sakic, Forsberg, all these guys in Denver, and Foote, Waugh. I mean, it's just there was no shock that those teams did well after that tournament.
Yeah, so essentially these tournaments can be catalysts for good NHL runs for players, like career moments for players and for organizations.
Yeah. I think you can't not have confidence when you come back to your team, because the speed, the tempo, you're just going to be so much more on it with against the guys who haven't been playing.
Yeah, I was good. So you can either get a bump because you were the best in the best on best, or we were wondering, with Russia not participating because of, they're not in the international stuff right now, do you think some of these teams with a bunch of players, whether it's Kopitar I think he's from Slovenia, or Kirill, or Panarin and Igor out in New York.
Kucherov in Tampa
with the goaltender.
You could go Draisaitl, Edmonton.
Exactly. Do you think those guys, if they're hanging in Cabo for 10 days, they also get a little shot in the arm where they come back flying, or do you think it's maybe the opposite where they have to sweat out the salt on the rim?
And I think this is an important element to that question is, let's say it is like the 96 World Cup where it was just a brawl, and there's a ton of guys with double-digit penalty minutes, and they're coming out banged up and bruised and earned every inch. Will there be a competitive advantage for teams that have superstars that were able to just rest all of a sudden for a week to 10 days?
Yeah, and I'm a big component of that. I think rest is great later on in the season. Our whole thing when we started getting into playoffs is how fast can we get these teams shot down? Can we do it in 4 or 5? Because getting a week off during the playoffs was great. We could rest mentally, physically, kind of get everybody back to who might have some bumps and bruises. I mean, we had to play Edmonton, I think, 4 years in a row, and we just hated playing them. But we always said we only want to do one trip to Edmonton.
Yeah.
2 trips to Edmonton could be our demise. It was in 96. They came back, won Game 7 in Dallas. From then on, it was 5 or 4 against these guys. We're like, just get it over. Let's take the break, take some rest. But I think it'll do, for Draisaitl, Kopitar, some of your guys that were, the Russians. I mean, I think they'll be, biting at the bit to get back and have some freshness, some energetic, and able to push it to the end. And, but I would have loved to have seen Russia, because their lineup would have been
unbelievable,
rock solid.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the 3 best probably goalies in the league. You look at...
It's crazy. What Russia has is high-end forwards and high-end goaltending, but then their defense, they don't have like the top-end D that you see from Canada, U.S., and some of these other countries, Sweden.
And Canada has a hole in net. I mean, it seems like. So it's interesting how the countries are shaping up. A lot of European players, they'll go gold medal, world championship, even ahead of the Stanley Cup. How about you? Gold medal hockey or Stanley Cup?
Yeah, that's where it's different. I think those guys, the Europeans, would say they take a gold medal or world championship over a Stanley Cup. That's what they grew up seeing, wanting to be. And I think for us, we're, playing street hockey, winning a Stanley Cup, Game 7, 8 years old, game-winning goal, that sort of thing. So that's kind of planted in.
Is that what it was? I mean, you have a cup. Was that what it was like for you? Cup a little higher than gold?
Yeah, I think so. I think 96 was just a little, it was kind of that 80 comparison, because, it was just such a, the tournament was just amazing. I mean, just It was just the hockey. There was just brutality out there. It was just one of those ones you remember that probably can't be duplicated like 80 can't and 96.
And when it comes to that question, I didn't play for a gold medal, but you put so much into the Stanley Cup. It's 15, 20 years. It's 80 games. It's broken bones. It's play through pain. It's sweat. It's absolutely everything for years.
And your whole career.
For years. And you can't at the end say, I had bad luck. Where in a tournament, you can say, we had bad luck. Somebody got a lucky bounce at a bad time and my tournament was over. You still want it, but I think you just invest so much more in a Stanley Cup than you do a tournament, like a 5-10 game tournament, that it's more meaningful to win a Stanley Cup than it is to anything else. And that would be me, but I never was able to compete for a gold medal at an Olympics. Like the World Championship, same. It's like, would a gold be great? Yeah, it'd be cool. Would love it. But will I be absolutely heartbroken if you don't get it? No.
Yeah.
But when you lose in the Stanley Cup Finals, you are crushed.
Yeah, it's and you know that may never have it happen again.
Yes.
We got to the 91 final here. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to do this next year. I was like, well, that was 10 years later, or 9 years later, 99. We get there back to back. Or like, these opportunities and chances don't come along. They have just such a continuity and a cast of characters and personalities that just mesh, and you go on a run, and everybody's healthy, and you make these playoff runs, and so it is, it's 2 months of just physical and mental demand, and playing through injuries and stuff like that, and the Olympics and the World Cup and the World Championships just has a little different kind of feel to it. You got to sometimes advance in a shootout in the international play at some point. So there's always just like these little hooks that just kind of make it a little different. But I just, the cup runs are just the hardest thing I think I've been through.
Well, here, let's double down on rest as a weapon. That's the saying we like to use. So when it comes to our favorite player in 97, Kirill Kaprizov, rest over the Four Nations will be a weapon, so he'll come out ready to go. And then if the U.S. wins, I think we'll all be happy. Then Boldy will come back with a confidence boost. Same with Brock Faber. And then all of a sudden, watch out, because they might have gold and silver in the same season. Would that be just the storybook?
That would be really great.
That's what we're hoping for, right?
That would be really great.
So rest is a weapon and confidence out after victory.
Yeah, so it's two sides of the coin. It's going to land right on the side.
You can get both.
It's going to land right on the side.
You can get both.
And the funny, in 02, we beat Russia to go to the final. We're like, we're going to get a silver. We're, worst case scenario, we get a silver.
Yeah.
We're all excited about that. Like, if we beat Canada, okay, it's great gold, but we're guaranteed a silver.
That is also cool. That's different when it comes to these tournaments versus and the Olympics versus the Stanley Cup. You don't get anything for finishing runner up. There's a consolation prize to losing to Canada or the gold medal game. You still get the silver, which is pretty cool.
You just get a really short off season is what you get.
That's right.
I was going to ask you a State of the Union on we'll do the Wild first, and then we can do USA Hockey afterwards. But obviously, great start. The 20 wins out of the first 30 games. Kirill making his case for the Hart Trophy. Great goaltending. I wanted to hear what do you notice? My only thing is were some of these games against Winnipeg, Dallas.
Well, I got an interesting stat, so go ahead and ask the question.
I think the only thing you could say as a fan, you might say, well, some of these bigger teams we're not getting the wins against. Now we have beat Tampa and Florida, but I'm just curious, what's your take? You've seen championship caliber teams. You've watched the Wild for some time. What's your take on the season? What do you think we have in the crock pot this year?
Well, I think it was benefited Heinze and the team to have a camp together. I think from the day one that president was set that, this is going to be intense, high-paced camp. And it kind of showed. They played great in training camp. They had some good exhibition games. The practices were just like, a drag match. They were just they're up and down, moving at things, and just kind of really kind of getting their identity kind of, I guess, solidified a little bit before the season started. So, but then you have the start. They've had some lackluster starts in October. By Thanksgiving, you're like, we got to go 7-3 every 10 until April to even get a sniff.
Treading water.
Yeah, in the 8th spot. So, like, let's do ourselves a favor. Let's have a good start. So if we do have some hiccups, some injuries, the Brodeen and, Act, that we can still, hold the fort until they get back, and we have enough cushion.
You can play 500 hockey and still be in a good spot.
Right. If things do go south, that you still have some leg room and some breathing because you had a good start. But I think it was just confidence. They all started playing well. Gus had a good start. I mean, Kirill's, been on fire, and that just kind of bleeds through everybody. And if you had guys out, you had Brodeen, Act, Zuccarella, they still kind of didn't miss a beat. Everybody else just kind of stepped up and played solid hockey. But they have a baseline foundation now of some good structured hockey. They're good without the puck. They're better in their own zone. They're making it hard for those second and third chances around the net that they probably gave up a little easier in the years before. So they're just they're harder to play against. You can see that they're frustrating teams, and so that's a good sign.
So to support your question, John, it's December 17th when we're sitting down talking about this, and up to date, the Wild have played 18 games against non-playoff teams, 13 against playoff teams.
I don't think I'm going to like this.
Mm-hmm. No, you're not.
Yeah, because I've gone to some of those games.
Yeah. Of the 18 against non-playoff teams, they're 14-1-3, 66 goals for, and a plus 25 goal differential, 3.7 goals per game. And for me, the difference in this is entirely offense. Now, against playoff teams, they've played 13 games. They're 500. It's 6-6-1. They've got 32 goals for. They're -7 in goal differential, and goals per game is 2.5. So they're down a goal point 2 per game against playoff teams. And for me, and this is why I want to ask you, because you have a good eye for offense, you understand that side of the game. Will they be able to generate enough offense against good quality teams? And it seems like against the teams that they should beat, they can. So figure Anaheim and some of these clubs out west, they can get 4 or 5 goals. Mm-hmm. But can they against the LA Kings? Can they against the Vegas Golden Knights? Right now, the answer is no. And they are depleted, so give them that. They're without Act. They're without a couple of guys. They didn't have Zuccarello, who's obviously important to the offense 5-on-5, but the power play as well. Do you think in these big matches against good teams that the offense will be there where they can get 3-4 goals a game?
So let's say all lineups aside are all healthy.
Yes.
So you have, you have your all hands on deck. I think that's where you find your good teams that go long and go deep have depth. They have good, probably 3 pretty solid lines that can contribute offensively because someone's going to get neutralized. You play Kopitar is going to go against Kaprizov. Mm-hmm. There's going to be this neutralized game that, you're going to have best on best, defense, whatever, have their pairings. That's where, your second line, Eck, whoever's with him, has to take a little bit of heat off the top guys. You look at everybody who's ever won a cup, there's always been, you got 2 good centers, 2 good lines. You have to offset that first D pairing that's going to do the shutdown guys. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that teams have 2 pairs of shutdown guys. It's just, doesn't happen. So you have to spread the wealth around, and guys who are dependent on to maybe check and neutralize other teams, they have to, I feel, there has to be some contribution offensively. Mm-hmm. And that's where you see these big, heavy teams like Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado,
Vegas.
They're heavy, they're fast, and they got depth. So you have to find, some scoring by community, because if you're going to ride this dude all year, Kaprizov, he's going to be...
At some point, they're going to run into a Kopitar that can shut him down. Yeah. And will the other group be able to step up and then get their goal and a half a game?
Yeah. That's where I feel like Rossi's kind of your wild card. If he can continue playing pretty decent hockey, be kind of
everything balances out with that.
Yeah, and then you got Eck. I think Eck's always been your little wild card as well. When he's healthy, he's a very good factor offensively. He can shoot the puck like I've I watch him. I think he shoots harder than.
Isn't it weird? It's not like, I think miles per hour, it's not fast, but it's heavier. And scientifically, I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's possible, but it sounds different when it hits everything. But we'll check like the player tracking data, and it's the same speed as anybody else, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's an
there's
absolute.
somehow, I've said this a ton of times to Billy, I said, somehow, some way, it just comes off a little different. Like, Hully's shot was kind of the same way. It wasn't harder, wasn't faster, but it came off kind of hard to pick up because he gets it off. It's heavy and fast, and it's just kind of like this little delay to him. But he's a big part of that. If he can get going, and that's the big thing. You're going to get weighed down by these big, heavy D, and Kirill. And those other guys have to really kind of be a factor to kind of maybe take that top two away from Kirill and put it on somebody else.
Yeah, that's a great call. So because Eck plays well all the time, but there's times when his offense is going, and that's completely different. And then you start getting contribution from Hartman, from Foligno, from Lauco, like guys filling the net. Because if you look at that stat, right, 50-50 against the playoff teams, in order to win a 7-game series, you got to win 4 games, not 3, right? So you're going to need the couple goals from Hartman, Freddie, all that.
And that's
the depth you're talking about.
That's probably what, like if we're trying to figure out if the Wild are for real, for me offensively is, can they get secondary scoring against the big clubs?
3 goals against good teams.
3 goals, but also secondary.
Yep.
Because Kirill's going to find his, just like the Vegas game.
Yep.
Kirill found his. Can you get a secondary goal? And is it going to come from the 4th line? There needs to be more from the 3rd line. And then can the 2nd line get one late in the 3rd period, like a big spot kind of goal?
Yeah.
For me, that will be the differentiator down the stretch on if they're legitimate offensively, or something that maybe needs to be addressed right around the deadline. Like we need one more scoring punch for our secondary help.
Yeah, and those big teams, they have like 3 layers to them. They got big, heavy, fast forwards, some good mobile, big defense, and then they got Hellebuck, the guy in Dallas, Ottinger. And is it
Aiden Hill?
Aiden Hill, and so even if you work your way through the forwards and D, you have to
still beat those guys.
You're standing up with 3 of the top goalies in the league.
Yeah,
and Hellebuck looks like he could have played in the '96 World Cup. I've never seen a goalie that big. It looks like he should have a neck roll on like a linebacker. He's a giant.
They're all big. And I see Wallstead. I was like, he's easy 6'5", 6'6" on the ice. It's really remarkable how big these guys are. But yeah, I mean it's going to be grinding out 1-0, 2-1 games, 3-2 tops in that playoffs. It's just going to be hard to get open ice and opportunities.
That said, I don't know about you, King. I'm grateful to be able to talk about this stuff versus the story where the Wild have to go 7-3 over their next 10-game segments for 4 months to be able to make the playoffs. I think the Wild, they're comfortably in a spot where they're going to make the playoffs. Now it's a matter of how do we become the best that we can be. One more stat. So against those playoff teams, they give up an average of 3 goals a game. Against the non-playoffs team, it's 2.3. So 0.7 of a goal more to the good teams. So the Wild are strong defensively, but it's a significant margin. That's almost a 30% uptick in goals against quality teams. For me, a lot of that is probably penalty kill. Did you kill, or I know obviously you're a power play guy, but
eventually started killing. Hitch, like if you're going to learn how to play in your own zone, you're going to be on the penalty kill. So that's kind of how the whole 5-on-5 doing all stuff evolved, because it's the best way to learn how to play in your own zone is the penalty kill.
Yeah,
you can't think offense. You got to be in the position. You got to have your stick in the right areas. Get in lanes. So that's kind of how that whole evolution of being on that ice. But yeah. PK was a big part of it.
What do you see from the penalty kill? And I don't know that it can be analyzed that well. My simple thought is just that it's mentally a fractured group. Like they have all the guys that can do it. Like you look at what they do 5-on-5 defensively, and they can't get it together. A man short. For me, it's just mental, and I don't know how to get them through that, or didn't know or how they got into that spot. It's not my job to get them through that. But what do you see on the penalty kill?
A lot of the same. And I think there was a little stretch there probably a month ago. They didn't give up a power play.
Yeah, they were finally doing good.
They were, 10, 12 chances, 15.
It was 20.
They were 0 for. Yeah.
It was 20 for 20.
They had a good run there. So, I mean, I don't know what's changed from then. It's just, but penalty power play meetings will watch Minnesota now, see what, maybe there might be a crack in the, the armor there they can expose. But, then you go, Edmonton is Edmonton. They just can make everybody look like they have a bad penalty killing. But, it's puck retrieval. It's getting the clears. It's getting it out of the zone. Getting face-offs, I think, is always key. I don't know what their percentage is in their own zone on a penalty kill, but I don't think it's very high.
Yeah.
So they're starting behind the 8 ball without possession and getting it down. So it's just, getting half a dozen good clears, get the clock rolling. But yeah, it's puck recovery. It's playing harder than 5 guys with 4, and sometimes you get running around, you get exposed, the lanes open up, and it's like, if it goes, our word of thought, if it goes through the box once, that's fine. If it comes back, you got trouble.
Yeah.
It's that.
Can't get double seamed.
No, double seams is big trouble. So
and we always try to keep the puck on half the ice. So
right.
If you can avoid anything through the seam or up top, change sides, keep it on one half the ice. That helps. But,
you want to cut the ice in half and leave it over there, and then know that there's always been a sleeper, quiet guy on that offside. That's
That's Brett Hull.
Yeah, your Stamkos, Ovi, Hully, this kind of quiet area, because Hully was like, I don't want to be the first option.
Yeah, and he doesn't want the puck. He wants to be the last one.
I want to be the third or fourth option.
I don't want to touch the puck before there's a chance to shoot it. I want to get it when there's a chance to shoot.
Take some shots from the point, rebounds, boom, boom, and then he finds his spot, and then it's it's chaos from the shot.
Yeah, that group for me is going to have to figure it out. They have the guys that can get puck retrievals. They can certainly clear it the other way. They have guys that can win faceoffs. It's just a matter of putting it all together. They went on the stretch where they went 20 for 20, and I think they took a sigh of relief. It wasn't like, hey, we're actually good. It was like, oh, okay, good, we got the pressure off. And then teams started to score again in like 3-4 games, and like, oh, here we go again. And now they kind of pucker up, and the guys can make those plays. Now they're just trying a little too hard again, and we'll see. But they're going to need to shore that group up for sure.
That'll be a big part of it. That special teams in playoffs is key.
So we got some fan questions for you. This is Fresh from the Fans by Pep's Pizza. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pep's Original Draft House, frozen pizzas.
Pep's
man.
Original.
Good stuff.
It's written right here. Well, I'll just do a call. I mean, these are really intense questions.
Oh, boy.
How many deviled eggs could you eat at one time?
Deviled eggs. I love deviled eggs. I don't know. Good dozen.
A good dozen.
Oh.
But that's only a half dozen eggs in his.
That's true, because a deviled egg's cut in half.
Yes.
Cut in half.
Fair.
So that's a full
Fair.
6.
Best advice for raising mites. You have hockey players besides basketball players, yes?
A little bit of mix, yeah.
And are they mites now, or what are they?
They're just kind of starting out, so they're like a mini mite thing.
Okay, best advice raising young hockey players in this hockey parent-crazed world.
Oh, stay out of it. Just don't say a thing. Just drive them there and go sit in the corner, and at least you're getting to the rink. That's the start.
I love that.
Is that hard to sit in the corner though?
Not for me. I can just sit there and hide and just watch them.
Because you kind of feel antisocial. You're like, I don't want to be like a bad guy, but I also don't want to talk.
I think some people are just kind of afraid to come up and say hi.
Yeah.
I'm like, so I'll kind of mosey over and kind of
intermission,
make myself, approachable. If you want to come say hi, don't be shy.
This one I think has to do with the World Cup a little bit. How much does a fight energize the squad? So for you, when I know at the World Cup you had to pick up everybody's gloves and bring them to the penalty box, tap them on the shin pads. But can that energize the group?
It can. I think it's a timing thing. It could be changing momentum of the game or get everybody woken up and get guys going. But it's funny, the World Cup thing. I mean, Lindros, I feel like almost decapitated Kachuk with that stick.
Oh, yeah.
Cross-checked him in the back of the head, and it was just, Shanahan's out. I mean, it was just ugly. I was like, I don't know how guys, today it would have been 30 minutes a game and probably suspended for 10. But, Messier, he was brutal out there, of course. But it can be a very positive thing. And you have the right guys in that position. They know when to do it, when not to, and so that's a good. I think it's positive.
When we're gonna get you out of here, but give us an update on you. Are you coaching? You got a daughter that plays, right?
She plays, but she's just doing some breakaway stuff, but then she does travel basketball. So
basketball.
She couldn't do both. She couldn't do association and basketball. So she's like, she goes to breakaway, does hockey in the morning, and then she'll do spring hockey at AAA in Wayzata.
So right now you're a basketball dad and a hockey dad.
Yeah.
And what's worse, sitting in the corner of the rink by yourself or hearing the screeching noise of all the sneakers in the gym for hours?
In a middle school where you're sitting around right on the line, on the boundary line.
I went into like a basketball gym because I only played hockey. I don't know anything about basketball, organized basketball, and never attended it. And I went into like a youth game, and the squeak from the sneakers on the court all the time because there's multiple games going on. And then the referees whistles.
I had chewing tinfoil.
I had like concussion symptoms when I left there. I was like, I can't even think right now.
Yeah, it's intense, and you got no buffer. No boards, no glass between the coaches and the refs. So these guys just, for 10-year-olds, it's like just it can get ugly, and you got the parents are right there. They're only a few feet from the kids and the coaches and the refs. So it's like, wow, it's intense. I thought hockey was bad in Minnesota, but basketball might be right up there.
Everything else good though, because it sounded like you were in a hurry.
Yeah, I want to hear this story.
You were in a hurry to get to one of those games, and a police officer pulled you over. So I just want to make sure that everything else okay.
Yeah, everything else is good. He let me off. Luckily.
He let you off.
Yeah.
Hey, officer, I got to get to this basketball game. Can you just let me go?
Yeah.
Sure, Mr. Modano. Yes. Will you sign this rookie
What are
card
you doing
for me?
back in town? I said, we moved back here. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Thanks. Well, hurry up and get to your game.
Yeah.
Like, thanks.
Kinger, anything else?
Yeah, just last one. I wanted to close on State of the Union USA Hockey. World Juniors is about to start. The U.S. has a chance to go back-to-back for the first time ever. It's interesting, if you look back at the World Cup, it's been so long since we had best on best, 2016. Really, Johnny Gaudreau would have been the guy to kind of bridge the gap between that generation and the younger kids. He was a leading scorer for the U.S. in the World Cup in 2016. And Matthews and McDavid were on that team North America, right? So the players on the U.S. team back then were, Ryan McDonough, Joe Pavelski. It was a different generation. So this group of players, Tkachuk brothers, Hughes brothers, Austin Matthews, Fox, McAvoy, Faber, Boldy, they've never had the chance to do this. How do you think we're going to do? Is the U.S. about to go on a run here, get a little... You had 1980, you had 96. Do we think we're going to have a moment for USA Hockey, or how are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. I think at this moment here has probably been your best, top to bottom, even in the goalie. You got Hellebuck, you got some great Ottinger, you got some killer goaltender, some top end forwards who are big, not even on, even on their main team, that to be international as well. So, I think it's just been the growth of hockey in the U.S. since, Wayne probably went to L.A. and we had expansion in, Florida, Dallas, Nashville, and a little bit more in California. So, the growth of the game has improved. Your opportunity for good players is improved and increased. So the talent level is kind of certainly increased. But I think from now at this point here, this has been, you might have the most high-end talent.
This is our shot.
Wow.
Well, I think you're right, and I don't know this for certain, but I think this is probably the group that started to punch Canada in the mouth at the World Junior level. Mm-hmm. Like, it used to be Canada's tournament, and now the U.S. came in and started to win some gold medals.
50-50, basically.
Yeah. And it's this age group that started that. So this group kind of put USA Hockey kind of near the top of the podium in terms of elite hockey in the world. The U.S. is one of them. And I think you might be right that this is their time, and they've played and they've won and they've got some confidence that on the international stage, we're not Canada's little brother underneath their shoe anymore. Like, we're right there with them.
Yeah, I think there's been a slow catch up.
Right.
Canada's flatlined. U.S. has kind of been, they've kind of crossed that crest finally, and they're up there. So I feel like they're just, they got a good lineup on forwards, but I don't think it's as deep and as young as U.S.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be, come down, like you said, Canada's goaltending, not your Brodeur Waugh days anymore. It's Bennington and someone else that's going to be backing them up. But I think that part, the game's always been a strong part for Canada. Is their goaltending, their defense, usually big and nasty, but that's changed too as well. So there's been a big shift in the game.
I have one last one. This is a Minnesota goodbye. I have one more question because I just thought about it. Do you think winning Stanley Cups matter in a tournament like the World Cup and stuff like that? Because Canada has a large advantage in terms of total cups won over the U.S. And what I think you learn when you win a Stanley Cup is how to play in big games and pressure-packed situations. Mm-hmm. You did it. You learned that you had success. Does that experience matter in these tournaments?
It does, but it's not a best of 7. You can always play a couple bad games and still knock off 4 and still advance. So there's that.
Yeah,
it comes.
And maybe
down,
what that teaches you how to turn the page.
To the NCAA tournament. One game you're out of the bracket. It's like you got to win 6 or 7 in a row to win national championship, even in the football category. So, for that one game, you got to just be on it and tight. And so, so
maybe game 7s are what we got to track.
Can there be
game 7s?
Yes.
That's a good call.
Game 7, yeah.
That's another bit of analysis we can make.
Single elimination's tough because, bad bounces happen, certain calls happen, so you try to think and guard against the things that you can't control that might have an impact in the game.
Yeah.
Rather than just letting the guys play. So hopefully they're a little lenient on the whistles and just let the guys play and not have, 8 power plays against 9 and become a skills fest.
Right. Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming.
Thanks. Sure.
Yeah, it's always fun to sit down and chat with you.
Always love it.
Great insight.
Thanks for coming back.
You got it, buddy. Thanks.
Peace.